a lot of times people say, oh, I have to recognize the emotion. I'm going to tell you that before that emotion actually shows up in your world, your body has already given you clues. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask you this, Lou, real quick. Just think about a moment where you faced some anxiety recently. So when
Mm-hmm.
I go into the office to work with clients, I actually start the morning, I light a candle. And with lighting that candle, I set an intention for this day. I want to be open. I want to be present. I want to be action oriented. Whatever comes up for me is the intention.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do my day working with clients. At the end of the day, when I finish my work, I blow out that candle and I release anything from the day that's still kind of sticking on me. And the truth is, most people, when they have someone who they love commit suicide, they're actually a little bit surprised that it happened.
Welcome to the Bo and Luke Show, a podcast designed to inspire you to be better, know better, and do better. You can connect with Bo and Luke on social media at The Bo and Luke Show, or send us an email at fanfeedback@theboandlukeshow.com. Brought to you by Sound United. Without further ado, let's get after it.
Bo and Luke Nation, we have a treat for you today. I am your co-host, Luke Carrington, and I'm sitting here with Bo Bravo and John Sovec. Did I say that right, John, by the way, before I jump?
Absolutely. Good work.
Yes. All right. All right. We're off to a good start. So John has more than 15 years of experience as a speaker, motivator, author, therapist, and coach. He brings not only his clinical expertise, but also a unique flair to each and every appearance that he makes. He's well known for his signature style, which mixes knowledge, focus, approachability, and humor to create an environment that encourages openness, growth, and development. John really focuses his work on uncovering people's personal strengths, building upon those strengths, and encouraging people to live their best possible life. With a joyous, nurturing energy, he encourages people to release fear and move through life with laughter in their hearts and peace in their spirits. And wow, do we need more of that? Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you so much. Yeah, with everything we're going through, a little bit of joy, a little bit of laughter, a little bit of family time really matters right now. It does.
Someone said to me the other day, they said, take everything in life seriously except for yourself.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, and don't believe your own publicity is the other one that I always live with too. Because when you start
Yeah.
falling for that and like agreeing with what's being written about you or said about you, it's like your ego will take over and you will be lost for a long time.
Oh, ego is one of the biggest drawbacks, isn't it? We can just start right there and jump right into that. I think that's if
Mm.
I looked at my own life and like where I can be the most successful, like looking internally, I think it's when I check my own ego that I really start to grow and look at things in a different way. But it's like I can get in funks with ego that last like weeks long, it seems, John.
Well, it's so fascinating too, because in some ways, if we look at ego, and I don't want us to go into that Freudian ego and like tear apart the psyche of the brain, but more this ego, this self-image, this idea of who we believe ourselves to be. I think it's so vital for us to balance that out with a certain sense of humbleness
Mm-hmm.
and gratitude. For me personally, those are the two things that really help me keep myself in check. To walk into a moment and, first of all, realize I'm humble here. I am honored. Like, just coming and speaking with you all today. It's like a beautiful opportunity to get some energy out into the world, to share some of the things, experience, and knowledge I have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not about me coming on here and just like, okay, Bo and Luke, this is the way it's supposed to be. And so that humbleness, I think, really helps keep ego in balance. And I think it's such an important thing for us to constantly check in with and be aware of like how we are affecting any room we walk into and how we feel when we leave that space.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you learn this? Have you always been this way, or is this something that you had to learn through experience and research? Like, walk us through how how we get the John that we see now.
Well, I think it's definitely something that was like a work in progress. Still am a work in progress, just letting y'all know that too. But it was one of those situations where I remember like a real specific one. I was working with this group one day and it was with colleagues.
Mm.
And as I was leaving the room, like it just felt really like anxious and angry and weird. And as I was driving home, I realized that the person who had made that happen in the room was me, because I had
Wow.
actually
Wow.
walked into this meeting and I had decided to tell everybody how it was supposed to go. And that was one of those moments. And I actually reached out to everybody in that experience. And I actually emailed them. I said, I want to step up and apologize because I feel like kind of like dominated that meeting in a way that wasn't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love some feedback from you to tell me what you see as my strengths, what you see as my weaknesses, and places that I can work on myself. I was totally vulnerable because I knew that I had really blown up that experience. And some people weren't comfortable with it, but the few that were really direct with me, and I appreciated that so much. And it has awakened
Mm-hmm.
in me this sense that I need to always check in. And the other thing that this comes from too, I'm also a yoga teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And in yoga, it is about bringing this mindfulness, bringing this awareness, constantly checking in with spirit, mind, heart, body. And these are the things that help keep that ego in check, invite humbleness, invite gratitude, invite joy, which is that word that I bring so strongly, into my
Mm-hmm.
world.
So it seems like what you're saying, we hear a lot of guests say something similar to this, that you never really get good at it. You just get better at practicing it, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Well, there's that I can't remember what it is. There's that I think it's a cartoon about like, I don't want to die peacefully with my hands crossed across my chest. I want to go into death sliding into third base with mud all over myself, chocolate cake on my face, and reaching for that one last thing that I want to do.
Mm.
And I think this is an amazing adventure. We're here for such a short time. So, yeah, this self awareness is going to make those experiences so much fuller, so much bigger. And why not commit that energy to myself? Why not commit that energy of awareness to bring a fuller experience of your life?
Mm-hmm. John, do you think in the work that you've done over the years and in your experience with technology today versus even 20 years ago, and how access to even podcasts like this and listening to people like yourself, are you seeing this awareness of self? Is it happening at a younger age than maybe it has in the past because there's so much access to people like you and information and reading and so forth versus years past,
If
or no?
if we pause and just think about it,
Hmm.
all of the material that we're talking about, and probably every single piece of information any of your guests have shared in the past, are all based on very basic human needs and concepts.
Hmm.
So much of this material has been written about in ancient texts, whether we're looking at things from the yoga text, whether we're looking at things from Buddhism, whether we're
Uh-huh.
looking at things from any of these long existing standards of awareness. It's all been there.
Yeah.
What I think is so valuable is we need to keep talking about it. We need to keep bringing it forward.
Hmm.
So having a moment like this and knowing that you have listeners that are hungry for this, that's where we just keep spreading the word.
Yeah.
Reminders. If someone listens today and remembers, oh, I want to check my ego at the door when I go on the next meeting, then
Hmm.
they're taking a step forward. And maybe, at the next episode of yours that they listen to, someone else says something that's similar, but just slightly different. And then the next meeting, they bring that forward. So, yes, there's more access, but all we're doing is really reminding people of information that's been around for a long time. There's actually a concept in Buddhism that talks about the idea that what we're actually trying to do in this lifetime is to remember what we already know.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And if you can sit with yourself and remember that you are a beautiful, powerful spirit in this world, if
Hmm.
you can remember and access that, that's what actually opens up the doors.
Yeah, I like that. It's very powerful. So I could see a lot of application to that, for sure, because your experiences in life, they're only, it's there's seasons. You go through different experiences, different things and so forth, but in today, if you're able to sit down and remember who you were, I could see how that could really, really, really help.
Well, and there's another really odd application for this, and it's so fascinating. This idea of like remembering can also come to play at something really, really simple. So let's say you have like a leaky faucet
Hmm.
and you get in there and get really frustrated trying to attack it with a hammer and a wrench and just go at it. It's probably going to just explode on you. But sometimes if you just like pause and slow down, it allows you to take in more information. You
Hmm.
look at it, and then some weird little thing in your brain clicks in. You're like, oh, the screwdriver on the top of the faucet will release that. And then when that releases, I'll be able to get where the leak is.
Yeah.
Like there is this weird thing that we actually have much more information inside of us, but all the noise around us in the world tends to drown it out.
Yeah.
So we take that moment, we pause, we look at the situation, and it's really fascinating the amount of skills that you may have
Mhm.
by simply pausing and looking. And that's like another facet of this idea of remembering.
Yeah. That brings up I'm literally, as you're saying that, that's ringing very true to my own home front. Because there are times when things aren't going right, like even, I don't know, like you're using the leaky faucet. My wife flips houses, and there's some stuff that she'll work on herself, and sometimes on occasion I'll go and help, and like it's just not going right. So we will literally look at each other and say, okay, pause, let's just slow down, right? Because we're trying to get this done as fast as possible, but we really need to have a little patience, exercise some pausing, and really think about what it is that we're doing. And that's what which is it's amazing how well that works.
Yeah, and you can apply it to almost every
Yeah.
aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you feel like that energy of overwhelm starting to rise up or anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually, I teach people to use that as a cue.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than being like freaked out that they're anxious or feeling overwhelmed, like, aha, you're getting some information from your body right now that says you actually need to step back for a moment and re-examine this situation. And so we use these cues because everyone says, oh, I'm so anxious. And I'm like, okay, what's the anxiety trying to tell you in that moment? What's it trying to help you with? What's it trying to make you aware of? And when we can step back in that moment, you can say, oh, I was anxious because this thing out of my control was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I understand that, I'm going to find ways to manage that. And then we start accessing that information.
Hmm.
So, how do you get better at recognizing the feeling that's coming up? So, maybe the feeling is anxiety, because now I'm thinking, well, when I'm caught up in the feeling, the last thing that's on my mind is taking a pause, right? So, step one would be like, all right, what is this emotion? And then use that as the trigger, like, okay, I'm gonna pause. Because what you're saying makes total sense, by the way. Like in every aspect of my life, personally and professionally, like the moment I think I'm getting really good at something is when life just smacks me in the face and says, no, you suck at it,
It's
Luke.
known to do
This,
that, isn't it?
yeah, yes, every time. So,
So,
how do you get better at doing that? I guess.
okay. So interesting. I'm actually going to take your statement and turn it a little bit on its head.
Please do.
A lot of times people say, oh, I have to recognize the emotion. I'm going to tell you that before that emotion actually shows up in your world, your body has already given you clues. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to ask you this, Luke, real quick. Just think about a moment where you faced some anxiety recently. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you remember feeling in your body, or even remembering the moment right now? What do you feel in your body? Like, where is there a part? Like, is your temperature rise? Your hands clenched? Do you feel your jaw tightening or something in your chest? Like, what are the physical cues for anxiety in you?
It's everywhere. I can feel blood rushing to my head. It's almost like you're a runner waiting for the gun to go off so that you can start running. Like I feel it shooting down through my legs. I feel it in my chest. I don't know, edginess, I guess.
Okay. So you're getting the sensation of this blood like racing down through your legs and like that pump like starting up. That's a huge physical cue that you're getting. So
Yeah.
before we decide what the emotional label for it is, let's address the physical response.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, I'm getting that feeling in my body. Okay, I need to exit the room. I'm going to go to my office. I'm going to run in place for 30 seconds. Get the blood actually pumping, let it move those chemicals through. Because the thing that's really just so important to understand is most of our most emotional contextualization is our brain labeling what a physiological response is in our bodies. A really cool way to understand this is they have actually done blood draws on people who talk about that they're really anxious
Mm-hmm.
and people who describe themselves as being really excited. And guess what? The release of cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, all of those things that pump us up
Mm-hmm.
are exactly the same between someone who's anxious and someone who's excited.
Oh
Hmm.
wow.
So, if we can understand that these physiological responses are really ancient,
Mm-hmm.
we like to put our human hats on and be like, yeah, I'm human, I'm not an animal, but we are having animal responses.
Mm-hmm.
And our body responds to something that's happening in our environment. And then it goes to our brain, and our brain labels it as a certain thing. And then that label takes us back into old stories of how we react and interact with that particular emotion. And so
Mhm.
pausing, Luke, when you notice that blood thing changing in you and being, oh, something's happening right now. Let me check my environment. What's making me feel unsafe right now? Then you can nip it in the bud before it even gets labeled as an emotion.
That's
Wow.
great advice. That is good advice. Good, John. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, but that's the thing too. I think we have been trained that the only way people tend to really be in touch with their bodies is when they're like in a fitness regimen or they're working
Mhm.
out and there's a result at the gym. But these machines that we walk in around are giving us so much information constantly. And if we can drop below the noise of our brains and notice, hey, I'm walking into this place. I feel really energized and light. This must be a really cool place. I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen here.
Mhm.
And
What?
these are so important to start listening to these cues.
What? Why aren't they teaching this to kids? This is way more important than anything that I learned, like, in grade school. Like, out of the stuff that I still use today, this would have been way more useful than, I mean, insert random fact that was taught in grade school.
Well, I would just suggest this that if you sent home a paper from school that said, we're going to be teaching mindfulness techniques to your kids, most parents would be like, what? Stop it. They need to learn math. They need to learn history. They need to learn to write. We don't, in the education system, tend to embrace the fullness of a human being.
Mhm.
Even the idea that there are a lot of kids who leave school and do not have the most basic concepts of how to interact with their bank or their ATM, how to get a credit
That's right.
card, how to pay car insurance. Like that's not taught, like the practical things.
Mhm.
So now we want to step up to this next level of like, hey, what about the internal story? What about mindfulness? And it is about, some programs are doing great. They're offering these additional things, sometimes after school programs. A lot of campuses that I work are offering like lunchtime yoga for kids and teachers.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, some programs have the ability to do that and set it up, but most don't have the resources or the interest.
Like, I mean, it's like a cart before the horse kind of thing, though. So, like, if you're having trouble academically, imagine how much mindfulness could help students overcome that in a
Mhm.
really meaningful way. And you took the words out of my mouth. Like, if I had to insert two things into the school system today, it'd be mindfulness and personal finance. Is like
Yeah.
two huge things these kids are missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, or just practical skill sets. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And Luke, and this kind of makes me think even about what Kiki was talking about when we're talking uh what you deal with from your mind perspective, what you're dealing with during the light, which is day, and then when it becomes dark at night and everything shuts off and you have no other stimuli but what you did not deal with during the day because
Yep.
it's still there. Um and then, insomnia develops and it's all this stuff and you can't shut off your brain. But if you had the skills for mindfulness that John's talking about, it seems like you would be able to approach things throughout the day and recognize what's happening physically to be able to make decisions to respond to or prevent a certain emotion like anxiety or fear or something that comes upon you, that then bothers you later at night because you weren't able to deal with it effectively. It's just fascinating to me how it just seems to it's all intertwined.
I agree.
Well, and a really fascinating piece of that statement is also the idea that we tend to amalgamate our days.
Hmm.
So we wake up, we, get ourselves ready, we go to work, we come home from work or turn off the computer, we go right into a family thing, we go into others, and then we go to sleep. And one of the things that I work with a lot of my clients on is actually taking a moment to validate each moment of your day.
Hmm.
So for myself personally, I mean, think about what I do. I'm a therapist. I have so much emotional energy of people coming at me all the time.
Mm.
Hmm.
And in coaching work, I have people who are frustrated with where they're at right now. And if I took all of that on and then came home, this would not be a happy house at all.
Yeah.
I don't think even my dog would greet me at the door if I came home like that. Okay. So what I do is I really validate each moment of my day. So when I
Hmm.
go into the office to work with clients, I actually start the morning, I light a candle. And with lighting that candle, I set an intention for this day. I want to be open, I want to be present, I want to be action oriented, whatever comes up for me is the intention.
Hmm.
And then I do my day working with clients. At the end of the day, when I finish my work, I blow out that candle and I release anything from the day that's still kind of sticking on me.
Hmm.
That little bit of ceremony
Uh-huh.
helps me to bring my work into a specific uh, chamber.
Mm-hmm.
So then I can go home. And on the way home, I tend to do this thing. Anyone who knows me knows I do this.
Uh-huh.
I turn up music really loud, open up all the windows and the sunroof on the car, and just like let it all go. Sometimes I'll sing
Nice.
really loud. Sometimes I'll scream. Sometimes I'll just let the wind blow over me. But once again, another conscious change into my
Uh-huh.
next environment. And
Yeah.
especially right now, when there's so many people working from home, it's even more vital that you create this delineation in your day as a way to say it's not just all one big run together. And
Yeah.
then you're not stuck at night when it's 11 o'clock and you're absolutely dead tired. Your brain's like, oh, you forgot to cross that T. You forgot to dot that I. Did you send that email? Did you? Brains are noisy.
Yeah. Yeah,
Gosh,
no,
they
that is
are.
fantastic advice. I even tend to do that. But like you said, working from home and home office, and it's just so convenient because it's right here that, you know, y- a lot of days you don't cut it off and do what you just said, and the next thing you're popping in and out of the office even all night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good. I don't, so I'm going to take your advice on that
I
specifically.
love the candle idea too.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's about finding one that works for you.
Hmm.
Another thing that I do, my clients all laugh at me. I drink a ton of water during the day
Hmm.
because if you think about it, I mean, I'm talking from like
Yeah.
9 in the
Oh
morning till
yeah.
6 at night. So I got to stay hydrated. And my clients always laugh. You may see I've been drinking water during our,
Yeah.
conversation today. Is it is also another way of like bringing me into the present moment with my body. And that's another way of creating these delineations. It's almost like a self-soothing technique in a way
Hmm.
Hmm.
that it helps me to not just, yes, I've got to stay hydrated, but also like drinking the water, being aware of it, even in the moment where I'm on a podcast and there's lots of questions coming at me and curiosities, that rather than getting overwhelmed by that energy, it's these simple reminders that can bring us back into the present moment. And now I'm going to be self-conscious about drinking water.
Yeah, I was just thinking
Just
about
planted
it.
that seed. Yeah.
Yeah, both of you right now are thinking, I really want a sip of water, but I
I know,
shouldn't
I got
take
it right
one.
here. I was looking
Too
at it.
funny. Yeah. Fascinating. So John, let's talk a little bit about when that emotion is fear, and how what are some of the tools and tactics people can use to try and eliminate fear from their mindset.
I have a really wonderful technique that I like to encourage people to use. And it has to do with the idea we detect where the fear is coming from,
Hmm.
we reflect why we're fearful in the moment, and then we choose to reject the fear or the stimulus for the fear.
Hmm.
So it's just this idea of detect, reflect, and reject.
Nice.
Oftentimes, we're not aware why we're in a fearful moment. And here's the really fascinating thing that we also know about fear-based experiences is
Hmm.
often our responses are not based on present moment fear. It's actually about past fears that we learned a response to, and we're doing automatic responses to the same stimulus.
Hmm.
So the way the brain works, if we have a really intense experience where we're a kid, maybe we got yelled at by a teacher,
Hmm.
okay? Later on, someone just raises their voice in our general vicinity. We actually travel back to that little kid version and we trigger that energy of loud voice, bad moment.
Hmm.
But what that does, let's say you're in a a meeting and there's someone who is a loud talker,
Hmm.
but you're like shutting down and getting fearful and anxious because you're triggering with that old response.
Mm,
But if you can detect, oh, wait a minute, this response is not based on what's happening in the room, this is just a person who talks loud,
Hmm.
then you reflect on it. Is there any danger in the room? Is there any danger in this moment? Is this loud talking person actually causing me any physical danger right now? No, not really. And then we decide, you know what? I am not going to take on this anxiety right now. I'm not going to let this fear overwhelm. And what
Hmm.
it can do, and you can watch it happen. Because a lot of times when the fear comes in, people start sinking in, their shoulders round in. And when you can go through this process, all of a sudden your body lifts up, your shoulders roll back, and you're much more open in the
Hmm.
experience. And the other thing that's fascinating too is you can actually just use those physiological techniques
Hmm.
as a way to trick the body. So if you're in a situation, you're starting to do that close in, like protect my heart, protect my belly energy,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, this is actually not a dangerous situation. Release the hands, sit up, lift the sternum bone, roll the shoulder blades back, take a big inhale to get your system working again, take
Hmm.
an exhale to release some of that fear. And you'll be really surprised how well the body responds to simply shifting the physiological posture.
Wow.
I just tried it.
Did it, did it work?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Luke's rolling his shoulders back
I
now. He's
am.
like, yes.
Yeah, I mean, better than 10 seconds ago. Yeah. I mean, but it's a lot of, it's a slight change. I wouldn't say that it's like you're like, hey, this just did a 180 and my day is completely different, but it's just enough of a nudge to get you thinking more positively, I would say.
Well, and it's really fascinating too, because so much of our like world and life interaction these days is based on this kind of hunched in, caved in posture.
Mm-hmm.
For
Yep.
those of you who spend your days working computers, what happens by hour two? You're hunched over, your neck is jammed forward, and you're
Mm-hmm.
typing with your shoulders up by your ears.
Yeah.
So then you have a big meeting and you're going on Zoom and you maintain that posture. Are you going to
Mm.
be at your best? Absolutely not.
Hmm.
We drive our cars, we hunch forward over the steering wheel. So we're already setting ourselves up into a weakened position. What if we're up a little bit more and then we become more open and aware to the world
Mm-hmm.
around us? We do live in a world where that rounded posture is becoming really, really normalized. And as a yoga teacher, I see it all the time. And it's just like, okay, just lift your sternum bone, roll open, breathe. There's room for this.
Yeah.
John, I'm like so after this call, I'm going to rearrange my screens and my camera here so that like I have to look up.
Mm-hmm.
Because now that I'm looking at you, I'm like, oh my gosh, the camera's down here. I'm looking down at this little screen. I'm doing that all day long.
Well, dude, and don't forget, you want the camera slightly up so you don't get the double chin.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. That's why I have the beard. So then you get the double chin gets lost in the beard.
If we're learning nothing from our influencers and selfie takers, it's like put the camera up slightly. It's so much better.
That's such a good point. Such a
That's
good point.
great point. Yep. 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 So, John, in your writing, you have a very good blog post out there, and it's from 2010 about suicide prevention in teenagers who are struggling. And I wanted to make sure I asked this question because suicide prevention hits home with me as a former army soldier, and even the veteran suicide rate um, today is just astronomical. And then there are professions like physicians who have very high suicide rates. And you've done a lot of work in this, and you write about it. Uh, what are some things that you've experienced or that you would recommend to folks who maybe have friends, family members struggling on how they can help them? Um, because it is just such a horrific, it doesn't matter what group of people it's happening to or however you want to classify them. Um, it's just a horrific thing that happens every day.
It does. And I think it's so important to really look at that, understand it is happening every day all around us.
Mm-hmm.
We're finding in this year of a lockdown that suicide rates have dramatically risen.
Yeah.
A lot of isolation, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of depression setting in. And a lot of people are feeling that taking their lives is the only answer they have or response to that.
Right.
And I think it's important for all of us to be aware. So, on a most basic level, I would say, like, check in with each other. Be
Uh-huh.
willing to reach out from that person you haven't heard from a little bit and just say, hey, just want to see how you are. My friends know that I'm famous for this. I'll just like randomly think of somebody, be like, hey, I wonder what Bo's doing. And I'll send you a text. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, just stopping by saying hi. People love this.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So, this is one way to be proactive in trying to battle isolation.
Mm-hmm.
But as you were asking, if you have someone in your life who has a family member, a kid, a spouse, that has committed suicide, one of the most important things we can do is simply be willing to be present with them. Not to have to dissect what happened to try and figure out how it happened, but
Mm-hmm.
simply to be there on the most basic human level. Bring out the old church casserole and take some food over to the family's house because they're going through a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
Also, understand that the more openly we can talk about suicidal experiences, the more we can make it less of a dirty secret. Um, if someone in your life you suspect is having some thoughts,
Hmm.
you have to understand that if you say, I'm just curious, are you feeling like you're going to harm yourself or maybe suicidal? It is not going to trigger any action on them.
Hmm.
Most of us who work with, this experience are so aware that we need to just talk about it openly. We
Hmm.
need to be able to just say, I see how you're really kind of going through it right now. And I'm wondering if you're thinking of harming yourself. And by asking that question and being present, it means, wow, someone sees that I'm hurting and we can talk about this. It creates an open space.
Yeah.
Most suicidality, when we look at it, there are actually very few clues that it's coming along.
Hmm.
We have this film and television version of it where, oh, there were these huge dramatic signs and this thing happened. And the truth is, most people, when they have someone who they love commit suicide, they're actually a little bit surprised that it happened. And so
Interesting.
I think I've given you kind of a few different layers. I think
Yeah.
we need to really try and maintain connection and care and love for each other as suicide prevention.
Hmm.
I would encourage, if you see someone you know is struggling, be willing to talk openly about it with them. And if you are a friend or love someone who has lost someone to suicide, simply be willing to be there with them and also understand that what they are feeling inside isn't just going to be done in a convenient, 1 month, 3 month period. There's
Hmm.
going to be something that they're going to be emotionally carrying for a long time. So where the world may move on, they're still going to have this story with them for a lifetime. So
Hmm.
maybe 6 months, a year in, just like, hey, I want to check in with you and just see, how you're doing with this.
Hmm.
Because grief is a really scary, lonely place to be.
Yeah. Wow.
That's great
Yeah,
advice.
it
So
is.
simple.
Yeah, it makes me think personally about all the tons of suicide awareness training, suicide prevention training. I think the Department of Defense as a whole does their absolute best on a grand scale to try and educate individuals on trying to see the signs of what might be happening in someone's life to where you can step in and do the types of things that you just said. um, Makes me think personally about leadership as a whole and thinking about the corporate world. And um, if you don't have great leaders and they don't really care about their people, you're just not going to recognize anything that might be happening. You might not be thinking about these things that you're talking about, hey, let me see how my people are doing. Let me just check in with them and see not how their work is coming along, but how are they, right?
Yeah.
How are they handling the isolation or the new work from home environment, right? What's impacting them on the home front? Do they have kids now being homeschooled every single day? Um, are you making those regular check-ins with people or not? So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Well, it's been interesting too, because over this last year, I've been working with quite a few large corporations, um, doing webinars with their populations, with their employees, about finding that balance space between this work at home environment, the
Hmm.
pressures of being a parent while you're trying to finish your report. And it's been really powerful, creating a space where people can look at tools and develop those for them.
Hmm.
But on a bigger scale, so my corporate experience is that I work for a very large corporation that was founded by a mouse. And in my experience there, it was so fascinating because I learned really different levels of how we can interact as managers or leaders.
Uh-huh.
I was in a meeting one time and there was a project going on, and there was a thing that we were going to do that just had that little bit of wrongness to me.
Hmm.
And I kept bringing up as like, I don't know if that's the best path for us to pursue. And a lot of the other upper level managers were talking about, well, it may not be the best thing, but we can get away with it, so we're going to do it.
Hmm.
I don't do well with that in the corporate environment. I
Yeah.
don't. I think we do need to pay attention to a certain, like, moral approach.
Yeah.
And what is morality is the action you would take when nobody was watching.
Hmm.
And I think it's so important for leaders to actually bring that into the work that we do. And
I
the
do
other
too.
big thing that I think is so amazing is, for me as a leader, it was also about making sure that I listened to and heard all the voices of all of the people who are reporting to me. I know it sounds challenging, but part of my work was I would make sure and actually go around in person at that
Hmm.
time and
Yeah.
check in with people and just kind of see how they were doing and what they were up to, and kind of get more of that personal approach.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so amazing is those people who are on the ground level doing the actual interactive work with our customer base. They're the ones who often came up with really brilliant ideas or brilliant awarenesses.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, I keep noticing the same thing keeps happening. You're like, I'm not aware that I hadn't heard about it. And then
Mm.
bringing that discovery of theirs with credit for them up into the bigger corporate structure. And it's amazing what you could accomplish by just being there, being human, being interactive, checking in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely powerful.
I'm going to try to just check in with one person a day. Just a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Yeah.
Hey, and even if you anybody who's out there wants to borrow it, do my random check-in text. You have no idea how much fun it is and how powerful it is.
Mm-hmm.
Think of somebody right now, boom, their name came up, send them a text, say, hi, just want to say, how are you doing today? It's so powerful and so beautiful. And I know everyone in my world, every once in a while, it's like, it's so cool that you do that. So I'm going to hand that off. And I want everyone who's listening today, right now, think of somebody, text them, say hello.
Yeah.
Unless you're
I think
in the morning and then maybe hold off to
yeah. Yeah, I do that occasionally. I don't do it enough. But even when I receive something like that, you get that it's the instant spark of joy, and you know that somebody was thinking about you, and you're on somebody's mind in that moment, which can be all you need to get through your day, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that connection, it's just so vitally important.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. This has been fantastic, John. We could have gone down any one of these topics in a much bigger scale. Yeah, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I think people are going to listen to this episode multiple times. I know I'm going to listen to it again. So even when I'm having a rough week, I'm going to pick this episode up.
Yeah,
well, you
for
know
sure.
what? You can pick it up when you're having a good week too.
I'll pick it up
This
both
is right.
weeks.
It's
Yeah.
so fascinating because with clients, sometimes there'll be that moment, it's like, well, I'm having a really good week, so I don't know what to talk about. It's like, that's so cool. Because in this good energy, we can actually talk about some of this stuff in a really safe way.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it can be really valuable.
Good point.
Listen to this inspiring stuff when you're actually in a good place and let it take you up to that next level.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Level up.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Well, John, before we let you go, you got to tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you, how they can get in touch, how they can transfer money to your PayPal account, all of that. So
So basically, just get a crystal ball, psychically connect to me through the crystal ball, and we'll do great. Or alternatively, you can go to my website, which is johnsovec.com, JOHNSOVEC.com. You can also find me on social media. I'm on Twitter at John Sovec. I am on Instagram newly as of January 1st. Oh, it's very anxiety producing. Breathe, John. And that's at John Sovec Therapy. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or curiosities or would like to connect and work together. I'd be more than happy to connect with your audience.
Nice. Thank you so much. Good stuff. Yep. This has been great. For all of the listeners, the Bo and Luke Nation, be sure to take John up on his offer. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. And be sure to go to www.theboandlukeshow.com, sign up for our email list, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you get your social media. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel because we now have the full-blown video episodes out there for the past three episodes or so, and we're going to continue to do that. So you can see John's face, you can see his big smile, and you can see him while he's talking, which is fantastic. So thank you all for another great episode. That's a wrap.
Tune in for a new episode every Thursday. You can subscribe to our email newsletter for information on upcoming guests, giveaways, and more. Rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you to our sponsor, Sound United, for quality broadcast audio throughout Season 2.